see y'all. Thank you so much for being here as we kick off a new season of Open Table. And we start with a topic that a lot of people are antsy about. And Karen and I are going to do some work tonight with y'all to help us all move into a level, wherever you are with talking about death, about your own, or about that of someone you love. We are all gonna move towards maybe taking a step into the conversation. So we're all starting from different places, but we can all commit, I hope, to taking a step further into that conversation, whatever that might look like for you or for your family. So as we think about that, I would love for us to start. We're gonna just sort of ground ourselves in this space because this is an emotional topic. It is a personal topic. It relates to every aspect of our lives. It relates to our spiritual lives, our emotions, our mental health, our physical health, our financial well-being. All of those things are wrapped up in a conversation about the end of life for ourselves and our loved ones. And so I'd like for us to just sort of center ourselves as we prepare for this. So if you would, just find a comfortable way to sit, whatever that is for you. Find your center in your seat. Feel the seat under you, under your legs, and behind your back. Feel your feet on the floor. Take a few deep breaths. As we make a transition from the day that we have had into this time and this space. This next hour that is dedicated to considering, acknowledging, and dare I say, celebrating our mortality. Because it is the thing that binds us all, and it does not have to be feared. So whatever you bring into this space is welcome. Whatever is on your heart or on your mind, wherever you are, is okay. And I'd like to set a group intention, if we may, that we will all work towards taking one step towards this conversation from wherever you are. Let us pray. Mighty and eternal God, we come before you grateful for the lives that you have given to each of us. Though we cannot count our days, we know that every moment that we have is in your hands, and for that we are deeply grateful. So help us in this time and throughout our lives to celebrate the time that we are given and to live to the fullest the lives that we were given on this earth.
So the burgers,
and in this
salad,
time,
and green
we
beans.
also
Is that
honor
good?
and remember
Yes.
and recognize those we have loved who now live with you eternally, who remain with us by the power
Leave
of
the
your
door
Spirit.
open. I'm coming out.
In the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
There's a few seats up there too, if anybody needs.
Yes, look at this. So, you know, when we undertake to do a class on talking about the end of life, we never know whether it will resonate or not. There's always a fear that people will stay far away because it can be a difficult conversation. It can be uncomfortable. It can be painful. And so we do acknowledge that reality. And I do want to say, as I said in our centering, you all come from a different place about this. You all have different life experiences, and all of that is welcome in here. Tonight we're going to do mostly teaching, but there will be time for you to share something. So sometimes when we come into these conversations, we have a lot of voices in our heads talking and experiences that we want to share. There will be some time for that this evening. This is also something that Karen and I and all of your pastors are more than happy to talk about with you individually. And so if something comes up in this time that you would like to talk about more personally, please let us know, because we would be happy to have that conversation with you. So we are moving into this time for the next 4 weeks of talking about planning for the end of life. And a couple of ground rules for our time tonight. As I just said, you'll have the chance maybe to share something. You don't have to though. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to speak. And we just ask, as we always do, that we honor the other folks in the room and allow everyone a chance to speak if they're going to, and recognize that other people's experience doesn't have to be the same as our experience to be valid. So moving into this, let's talk about this series and what we're going to be doing for the next 4 weeks. Tonight, we've called it To Dust You Shall Return, and we're grounding ourselves a little bit in some scripture around our human lives, but also talking about the importance of being open and honest about what it actually means that we are mortal and that we will return to dust. We will return to our sacred and holy home. And then next week we have Walt Windley, who is the Senior Director of Spiritual Care and Grief Services at Via Health Partners, which many of you may have known as Hospice and Palliative Care in the Charlotte region. They've changed their names, but it's the same group. And he's going to talk to us about an overview of hospice and palliative care. I'm very excited about that. That's a topic that brings up a lot of emotion for a lot of people. It's also something that is very misunderstood. One of the things I find in my work is frequently when families are moving towards a point where hospice comes into the conversation, the thought about what that means is limited in comparison to what hospice actually is and does and provides. So whether you have experience with hospice or you don't know anything about it, whether it sounds like a really terrifying word to you or not, really encourage you to come and hear what Walt has to say about it, because the hospice and palliative care are an incredibly important part of our healthcare system, and the more people know about them, the better for everyone. And then on September 17th, we will have Angela Beamer Ratliff from Novant Health coming to talk about advanced directives, and she will also have paperwork that can be filled out that night. So if you do not have all of your advanced directives, if you aren't sure what you have, if you don't know what they are, any of that, please come. That's such an important part, no matter what age you are, no matter where you are in life. Advanced directives, having that all buttoned up is really important for each of us as individuals and for our loved ones. And then we will conclude on the 24th with a conversation, Witness to the Resurrection, Funerals and Memorial Services at Covenant. We will talk about all of the details that go into funerals and memorial services. We will talk about very specific things. I may call on my friend Pat Visor, who is our resident expert as our bereavement committee chair. What happens at Covenant? How does the process work? What is possible here? How do we do things? Why do we do things the way we do? All of that. So hope you'll plan to come for that one as well. Questions about the series?
Yes.
Yes, Alex.
In the end, will we get some sort of access to an outline or something? The only reason I'm selfishly asking is we could only make 2 of these. And we
Yes.
wanted to know if we could later get, without having to watch the whole YouTube, some summary of the points.
Thank you. Yes. So for those of you joining us on Zoom, thank you for being here. And all of this series will be on YouTube. But we also will have a document, a booklet that we will have the last day, and then it'll be available to the church after the 24th. We'll have it out, available for people to pick up, or they can just call and ask for it. An end-of-life planning document for church purposes particularly. It won't have all the legal pieces and all the advanced directives, but it will be sort of a checklist for church purposes. Thank you for asking that. Yes. So let's talk about, okay, I can't see that screen. Where it all begins. So after the garden, God says a lot of things we know to Adam and to Eve. And one of the things that he says to Adam is this: from dust you came and to dust you shall return. Where do you hear these words more frequently? What is this? Does anyone have when are you used to hearing these words? Funerals, graveside. Is there another time of the year, the liturgical year, that you remember? Yes, Carla.
We call it.
Ash Wednesday. Those are the words we use. From dust you came and to dust you shall return. Ash Wednesday is a reminder of our mortality in the liturgical calendar. So after the garden, humanity is expelled from paradise, And God says these words, from dust you came, to dust you shall return, which can sound a little foreboding and intimidating and scary, and maybe so. But you know what happens 2 verses later? 2 verses after God says, from dust you came, to dust you shall return, God gives them clothes. God puts clothes on Adam and Eve as they are expelled from the garden and sent out into the crazy world, aware of their nakedness, aware of their vulnerability. God clothes them. God covers them. So even in the face of our mortality, this is our reality, even in the face of our mortality, we are covered by the grace of God. And so as we go into this conversation, we can hold on to that truth of our faith. That yes, we are mortal, and that is scary. We don't want to lose anyone we love. We want our lives to be as rich and full and long as they can. And we are covered by the grace of God, even when hard things happen. So this quote is one I found this week and I just love. Have any of you heard of Brother Stendhal Rast? He's a 98-year-old Benedictine monk, still alive, author and scholar. He's often called the grandfather of gratitude. And this is what he says that I think is so beneficial to us. The finality of death is meant to challenge us to decision. The decision to be fully present here and now, and so begin eternal life. For eternity, rightly understood, is not the perpetuation of time on and on, but rather the overcoming of time by the now that does not pass away. So instead of thinking of it in purely linear terms or purely black and white terms, the life here and now and the life eternal, he's encouraging us to see this in more of a way that we understand that God sees it, is that time marches on and comes back on itself, and that eternal life can be a gift of the here and now, as well as something that we look towards. And so that helps us to celebrate the life that we have now, to celebrate what it means to be fully alive in this world today, with an understanding that it is temporal, it is finite, and we will go on to something eternal, but we don't know what that looks like, and we don't have to, because that's not in our control. And so in Romans 14, you've probably heard these words: we do not live to ourselves, and we do not die to ourselves. If we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So then whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. And I think that harkens back to what Brother Stendhal Rast wrote, that in our human, earthly incarnation, we belong to God. And in what comes next, in eternal life, we belong to God. And so put together, again, we are covered by God's grace in this mortal life, and that is a gift and a beautiful thing. And standing on that knowledge, we can then look with confidence into what is needed to live that life as fully as possible and to support our families as we all think about the eventuality of our own mortality. So that's all well and good, right? We can ground ourselves in that, but when it comes time to actually talk about these things with our loved ones, super easy, right? Such an easy conversation at the breakfast table, right? In the car, on the way somewhere, on the way to vacation. Hey, you know what? I wanted to talk, let's talk about this. Okay, so this, for some reason, this is a really hard topic for almost all people, almost all families. It's a really hard topic to talk about what your wishes are for the end of your life, what you want, what you don't want. And it's an interesting thing because it's going to happen to all of us. And so we have this great video from a website that Karen introduced me to, and I really hope this is going to work. It sort of broaches the subject of how we plan a lot of things in our lives, but we don't really do a good job of planning the end of our lives. Right.
I think for me, it started when in my family, we experienced the loss of my mom. She was about 50 years old. And at the time I was 29, just still kind of new in my career as a nurse. And she initiated what she wanted done. and we weren't ready to hear it. And her physician wasn't comfortable talking about what we needed to be doing. And I was a hospice nurse at the time, but I was a daughter. And so that experience really changed me. It allowed me to see that we need to, particularly in my family culture, that we needed to sort of open up the box and not be afraid to talk about death and dying, and not be afraid to talk about what the plans are. That we plan for education. In my culture, it's very important for people to go to college, because for so many years people didn't go. So my family, that was what they focused on. Go to college, get a good education, become a teacher, doctor, whatever. We plan weddings, but we don't plan how we want our lives to be at the end, and who we want to direct that if we can't do it ourselves. So I've embraced that, and in my work as a hospice nurse early on, I was talking with families about these kinds of plans, and I saw the difficulties that families have with this. And now I'm working with the association, working with providers, and I want to see more community engagement. And so that's why this is so important to me.
I thought that was profound, that we plan for education, we plan for weddings, we plan for any number of things, but we are terrified to plan for the thing that will happen to all of us. So I was thinking,
Katherine, when we're
yeah.
talking about planning for that, there's a difference between planning for the dying and planning for the funeral, because it feels like everybody plans for the funeral. At least when you guys talk about it. I feel
it's amazing how many people don't, I would say, doing the work that we do, it's amazing how many families we sit with where no one has any thought about what they want to have happen. And that's a reality. So I see it as wrapping all in together. That's a great question, I think. But yes, we are gonna have some back and forth between, so like with the advanced directives, that's very much end of life. What kind of supportive measures do you want? What kind of life-saving measures, do not resuscitate orders, those kinds of things. And then funeral planning, but that's why we wrapped it all in together, because it really, those things can all be woven into the conversation. So, and one of the things we're gonna do tonight, Karen's gonna lead us through, is sort of beginning the process of figuring out what's important to you. Because there are those among us for whom it's really important that they not suffer for a long time. And there are those among us for whom it's really important that they extend their life as long as they can. Both of those things are valid, and both of those inform many of the choices that we can make. Does that answer your question? Does that help? Okay. So some of the reasons that we don't have these conversations, she mentioned some of them in the video, and fear, it's scary. If I say it out loud, it's gonna become real. And that's a very natural human reaction. Family dynamics and history of conflict. Anyone have some of this in their family? History, what has happened in the family, what the dynamics are, who has the power, who makes the decisions, who annoys everybody else, who never talks about anything serious, all of those things. Not that that happens in any of our families. Uncertainty. I mean, that's part of what we're gonna, I don't know. I've never thought about it. I don't know what I want. I don't know if I want to be cremated or if I want to be buried. I don't know if I want a service at the church or something else. I don't know. And so I just don't want to talk about it because it's too much. Cultural norms and expectations, there are a lot of those across a variety of cultures, and those have a big bearing on us. Denial, it's not just a river in Egypt, it is very real. If I don't talk about it, I'm afraid if I don't talk about it, it won't happen, and we'll just keep going on. What are some others? Are there others that you know of, Bill?
Yeah, we found it hard when my mom was approaching the end of her life because she was suffering from dementia, and we really couldn't have a conversation with her about it.
Yes.
Luckily, my mom and dad had done a lot of things written down, prepared for it, but it was kind of like not talked about for 8 or 10 years, and it's like, oh, here we go. And she couldn't be part of the conversation.
Yes, so cognitive changes and challenges are a very big part of that. Thank you. Anyone else?
Emotions.
Emotions, yes.
Some people can't talk about it.
Right, I mean, there are a lot of people who begin the process and start crying and stop or freeze up. You know, we all have different reactions to our emotions, and if we feel overwhelmed by the emotions and we don't wanna keep going, then we just stop and then we're scared to go. Thanks, Caroline, that's a good one. Sometimes it's just, I don't wanna do that. So those are all legitimate and real and important for us to consider and to address. I'm gonna hand it over to Karen now, who's gonna lead us into some ways to begin, like I said, taking a step into the conversation.
Thank you. Switching notes up. So I think everyone here knows me. If you don't, my name is Kerr. Willis. I'm the parish nurse here at Covenant. I'm happy to be with you guys tonight and talk about something, make sure I'm pointing in the right direction. There we go. Talking about something that's really important. And as I was researching this, and whoa, I did not turn it that way. Whoa. Okay, I better not wave it around. So I thought this was really interesting. Talking about what matters most at the end of our lives isn't easy, but it's something most of us have a deep value related to what happened to us and what our life is like up until the end. So these statistics are pretty straight on and really gives us some perspective. 92% of Americans say it's important to talk about their wishes, but only 32% have had the conversation. And then 95% say they'd be willing to talk, and more than half say they feel a sense of relief in doing so. But we don't always have those conversations, do we? And it's hard, just like Katherine was pointing out. It's not a simple thing. So as we think about, there's a bit of a delay, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm, there we go. So the question I ask all of you don't have to answer, I don't want you to answer, but I want you to ask yourself this question. Does anyone know your plans if you died today? We don't want to think about that, right? But do people know what you want? And that's really what this conversation starts with. Talking about death and dying is not easy, right? But it's what matters most to us, and it's so important. So tonight I'd like you to kind of, as we approach this next section, is think about it like the woman in the video said. We plan getting to college, having a family, buying a house. But do we ever really plan what's going to happen to us and how we want to be at the end of life?
We tried to approach our kids about it, and every time it's been like, oh, we don't need to.
Okay. So this is an important topic. So maybe when you come out of this, you might learn some ways to approach it differently. So as I was telling a friend that I was talking about this tonight, she's like, this is gonna sound really weird. She's like, it's putting the fun in funeral. I'm like, maybe not, but at least be an open conversation. Yeah, that isn't how I would put it, but I thought that was fun. So it's a little delayed, but I'm in there. So how can we navigate these difficult moments with a sense of dignity, compassion, and respect for both the life and the death of our loved ones and or ourselves? You know, I know your kids might not want to talk to you about it, but they're gonna have the same issue one day. And we'll get to that part in a minute, but everyone needs to be having these conversations. I just sent my daughter off to college. We didn't have that specific conversation, but we definitely had conversations about what happens if this, what happens if that. But should we? Yeah, maybe we should. And I think that's really important. Normalizing it and opening ourselves up to just having the conversation at all. So, I want you to take a moment right now and just become aware of what you know and what you don't know about end of life. Okay, so another friend I was talking to had this realization that didn't even know what hospice was, didn't understand what it was, don't know what an advanced directive is. A will, maybe some people have a will, but that's not the whole puzzle piece. Some of it's even just a conversation. So be thinking as you go through this, like, what do I know? What do I need? What am I thinking about? And remember, kind of put it in that context of you're planning for an important event in your life. I hit the button. Hey, there we go. Personal stories, and I just wanted to put this out there, so I'm just gonna tell a couple of mine. I told a couple already, and I'd love to hear some of you, but, so when my husband and I started putting our will together, which a lot of people do, you know, they make you fill out this form, and you're advanced, right, you have to answer questions. It's not something that you go into and just check a box, right? Yes, do that for me. No, don't do that. I think it's bigger than that. It's something you have to think through and really decide what's for me, what do I need, right? In 2018, my father, who had dementia, we talked about that, was in the memory care unit, and my mother had passed away just 6 months before. And we were having to make some hard decisions about my dad. I won't get into too much detail, but he had dementia, and the course of treatment was to amputate both his legs. Well, what do you think that is gonna look like for someone who doesn't even know that they have legs or they can stand up? So I was his healthcare power of attorney. I had to make a hard decision. And then even deciding where he was going to be at that end of his life. Was it gonna be in his memory care unit? Was it gonna be in a hospice house? Was it gonna be, you know, with me? No, that probably would never work, but thinking about that and thinking about what conversations my father and I had had before he lost his memory helped me make those decisions. We didn't write it down. Would have been nice if we did, then I wouldn't even have had to try to scrape back my memory and tell my sisters, this is what I know that he would want. It would have made it easier, but I knew what he needed. And I was chosen to be his health proxy or his health power of attorney because they probably knew that I would make the right decision for them. And that's something else that's gonna be important as you go through this process. So those are two stories for me. You know, it was hard, but I knew I did the right thing and I felt right about about how we ended his life with, like that previous slide said, dignity, respect, and compassion. So those are things that I think we all need to think about. Anybody else have a story, maybe not quite so sad as mine, but I can try to make it. Yeah?
When my mother was passing, well, she had, you know, cognitive decline for a long time. She did in Southminster for 10 or 15 years. And, but, you know, one day she quit. You know, I went to visit her on a Sunday. I couldn't get her up. And she never woke up again. But it took 4 or 5 days. You know, and she had been in hospice. That's one of the things I learned was hospital will fire you. Hospice will fire you if you don't die soon enough. So she's been kicked off. So we didn't really formally have hospice on board. But she was in, you know, the right place at Southminster. And my sisters, for some reason, didn't think she needed any meds. You know, she doesn't seem to be in distress. And I would look at her, she's breathing like 120 times a minute. And I was getting really upset. And I called my brother-in-law, who's a physician. And I was talking to him about it, and he said, you know, you're probably right, but you really don't want to start something with your sisters like that. And I thought about it, and I said, you're probably right. And I let it go. And then 15 minutes later, my sister called me. And she said, we think you're right.
That's a hard story to tell, I know. But I think it highlights something that I think is super important. It's not like the person that's dying gets to decide what they want, but everyone around them needs to know what they want. It's a family understanding so that everybody can understand and be on that same page. And without that, nobody really knows. There could be, you know, arguments or discrepancies between what people believe is the right thing to do. The plan is important. You had your hand raised.
Well,
my grandmother's situation was the exact opposite. Families around her trying to discuss what she wants. Everybody has their own ideas. She gets ticked off with everybody and says basically, I'm gonna be dead and going, I don't give a. And she said some words I can't say here. And in 96, I was still learning language from her. Don't make a decision. Well, she did pass. But that created another week and a half of civil war. Because there was no decision and there was the pomp and circumstance crowd and keep it simple crowd. So do your people a favor, make a decision yourself and tell your folks, this is what I want. And let them deal with it after.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'll leave them torn up with each other.
A powerful story of what happens when we don't have a plan. And I've seen that many times in my own family. I bet everybody has a story like that somewhere, where something wasn't decided and there's fighting or arguing or people don't take sides. At the end of our lives, there's a lot of emotion anyway. To eliminate some of that frustration and unknown is super important to help everyone. And I'm gonna use this word enjoy or be present for those moments. So that's why we're here talking about it.
Karen, I have actually a good story. So my in-laws, and I don't know when they did this or what was the context that they did it, but they had done through their church, I think, a little directive, and it said the songs they wanted, it said some verses they wanted, and it made us feel so much better knowing we were honoring their wishes when we were doing our plan.
Right. How many of you had a loved one die and you had to pick the songs, pick the readings, write the eulogy, write the remembrance, write the obituary, pick out the casket? There are a lot of parts. It's a lot. It's a lot to manage. Anybody else?
It wasn't a family member, thank goodness, but I had 3 people that were right around 50 years old, friends of mine, separately, independent, that just didn't wake up one day. And one of them was my next door neighbor, and he didn't have a will. He had kids and they were grown, but nevertheless, it created some complications. So people need to have something because you don't know when your time is gonna come.
You really don't. And 50 sounds young, right? At least to most of us, it feels young. But I think those are things that we need to understand. This is not something, we're gonna talk about that more. I probably shouldn't have gone. But anybody else have any other thoughts, stories, questions?
I want to share one, if I may.
Please.
It's a little bit of a different spin on it, but my mother died from cancer, and she always said she wanted to die at home, and that was our goal, was to honor that. And then towards the end of her life, her pain got so bad that it was unmanageable at home. And even with hospice, they could not get her pain under control. And so they took her to an inpatient hospice facility, and she was stabilized, and we had hoped she would be able to come home, and she wasn't. And we had to come to terms with the fact that it was more important to us to honor her bodily integrity and her ability to be out of pain than to be concerned about what location she was in. And so that was hard because we wanted to honor her wish to be at home, but she couldn't be at home and be free of pain. And so she needed to be in an inpatient facility. And that was the best decision we could have made because she was able to have a good death, which is, to me, a death that is surrounded by love and free of pain. And so sometimes, many times, it doesn't go the way we think it's going to. But knowing that it was important that she not be in pain, made that decision.
I think that's another good story. Thanks, Katherine. Anybody else have anything else? We can always come back and tell more stories at the end of time, which we may. Patience. So starting the conversation, that's kind of where we are. Who needs to have it? Well, think about it. Pretty much everybody, but you know, there's ways to look at that. Families as a family together. Who is your family? It might not just be the people in your, you know, birth family or the people that you are related to. Your family could be anything, anyone, anybody you think is your family. Anyone over 18, I talked about that because I think we don't think about, like, if you're 25, do I need to have a plan? Well, maybe to a certain extent, but maybe it's something we think about. It's not gonna hurt anything. And actually, it could be really helpful because a 25-year-old might be living on their own and living their own life and nobody knows what they want. We've all heard stories of things that could happen. And then solo agers, as I was reading and doing a lot of research on this, I think that's probably one group of people who don't maybe have children or another person that is a spouse or whatever, definitely need to have somebody that's their person that they is their healthcare proxy that they talk to, you know, whatever that might look like. So those are just some things to think about as we're going through this. Remember what I started with? What Katherine pointed out in the video is we plan for a wedding and we're planning for this. So we're thinking about these pieces of the plan. So I would ask you to start with what matters most to you. You know, I remember when I had to first check those boxes, where I was 25 years ago is not where I am today. It changes. But it makes you think about, what do I really want? Do I want to die alone? Do I want to have people around me? Do I want to die at home? Do I want to be in a hospice house? Do I want to be without pain? Of course, pain. But, you know, what is it that I want? Do I want music around me? How do I want to feel when I'm at that place in my life? So gather those thoughts, think about it. You know, we put ourselves out there and say, I can't think about it, but what if we did? What if we did it? You know, it could actually be pretty eye-opening about where you are in your life right now, and thinking about what's next for me. And then the other thing I think is really important is, what kind of supports do I need to make things where I want them to be? Are there certain people I need to talk to? Maybe I need to educate myself about certain things. What are the options? And maybe even who in my family would I even want to talk about this with? You know, I think about that a lot. Especially every scenario you go through in my type of work, I think this is kind of interesting. When I went through nursing school, did we talk about this? I don't think we learned about it in this way. I might have learned how to take care of a body after someone had passed. But we, at the time, I graduated from nursing school, we didn't talk about feelings or planning. To be honest, I'm not sure there were like defined advanced directives then, but we have that now. So that's something really important I think we all should be opening our mind to. It always seems too soon until it's not. So what's next? Well, as we think about what matters most to us, we kind of have to start planning this conversation. Okay, so you guys have tried, but maybe there's some other ways, and we can keep talking about that. What's part of that conversation? It's part healthcare, could be who am I gonna share this with? Like, when's a good time? Know what you want. You kind of need to be thinking about it, have your plan before you go out there and talk to your family. Or maybe you need them to walk through some scenarios with you, with them. You know, my father never said, I'm gonna go to a hospice house. I don't even think he knew there was such a thing. But I knew there was, and I knew that that would be a better environment for him and my family at the end of his life, rather than being in a memory care unit where you don't have privacy and all that kind of thing. So open your mind to thinking about it and then start talking. It's not that you're gonna maybe have one conversation. You might be lucky and maybe you get it all figured out and you know what you want and you tell your family, done. But Maybe it's several conversations. Maybe it's not a sit down at the kitchen table. Maybe it's a car conversation. Maybe it's Thanksgiving. Maybe it's dinner. Maybe it's something else. But clarifying in those conversations is really, really important. And what do we need to address in that conversation? It could be a lot of things. And everybody's gonna be a little different. Nobody's story is exactly the same. It could be finances and property. Yeah, we know about that part. Legal, health decisions, relationships. If you have children and they're younger, you might have to think about that. Maybe you have young adult children, they still need support. You know, maybe you have older parents. What if you passed and you have an older parent you're caring for? That might be something else to consider. So just thinking about all of that, there's a lot of pieces and parts. So, like Katherine, I have a great video. And I think it's really a good one that kind of opens up our minds to having these conversations. Before I hit play, anybody have any thoughts, questions? Anything before we get play? All right. Let's see, Katherine, how'd you get yours to play? I'm gonna hit the button here. Maybe I did. Oh my goodness, it's small. How'd you get yours to play?
I just pushed.
The button?
Push the button, I don't know.
Push it again?
It says watch on YouTube.
Yeah, that's.
Find it at the computer.
You have to highlight that on
Yeah, you have to
here.
point it at the computer.
Yeah, there you go.
No, no.
It was on, and then you turned it off.
Or use the keyboard.
Okay, you gotta stop.
There you go.
Stop.
Play it? It's like trying to hit my mouse. Okay, so.
Mom, Dad.
Sweetie, can we talk?
Everyone, dies.
So, how do you want to go? Do you have a plan for your end of life care? Because I don't.
Don't take this the wrong way, but you're not getting any younger.
So I was binge watching Game of Thrones, which reminded me that everybody dies.
Oh.
You've heard of the birth plan, right? It's like that. Only the opposite. I need your help with something. Can we talk?
My biggest fear is losing you, and that I won't know how you want me to care for you toward the end.
Remember what happened to Aunt Maria? I don't want that to happen to you.
You've taken care of me your whole life. Now it's my turn to take care of you.
So maybe there is a little fun in some of this, because that was kind of funny. Love the Game of Thrones reference, because everybody dies in the Game of Thrones. So on the screen, there's a bunch of resources. Don't worry. If you are interested in the resources, I was trying to find a piece of paper, but you get the lovely opportunity to write your name and email or your email address up on the board, and I'll take a snap of it and then I'll send it to you later. Before we do anything else, any other thoughts, questions? Katherine, I don't know if you have anything else. We also have over here this wonderful resource that I found. You're getting a lot of information from this organization called the Conversation Project. And they're really about just helping people have the conversation, talk about it, know what to talk about, where are the resources, what do I need to do, and making it easy for you. But I have these great packets. It's kind of your conversation starter guide. It talks about what do I need to be thinking about? How do I plan that talk? What matters to me? How do I even decide? How do I know what I want? It asks you some great questions that are kind of food for thought, and okay, I hadn't thought about that. So these are, I have plenty of copies up there for everyone. You can take one if you leave. They also have this online, but you can fill it out online and it comes in a PDF. You can download it to your computer, you can fill it out and then print it or keep it somewhere, email it to your family. I don't know what you can do whatever you want to, but they're definitely helpful, so, so just some things to think about. Anybody have anything else?
So practically, this is a great thing for the conversation starter. And to go back to the question, we are gonna have that booklet. It is really wise, and some of you may have this and some of you may not. Have any of you heard of the knock box?
Yeah.
Yeah, the next of kin box, and it's a box that you have all of that. I see folks in here from the legal profession and the healthcare profession, and those folks, I imagine, have that pretty much buttoned up. But not everyone does, but you could create your own. But a huge benefit in this process is we've talked a lot about starting a conversation and then writing the stuff down. And so using documents and resources so that your loved ones can find them quickly. That really, really helps. And we're gonna keep talking about this in each subsequent class because as Tim said, these are a multitude of different things, what we're talking about. End of life, as we've talked about tonight, encompasses a lot of things. And so it encompasses, ideally for most of us, it means the gradual decline at the end of a long number of years. For some people, that is not the case, and end of life comes more rapidly. But it includes the healthcare piece, it includes legal and financial pieces, and it includes the church piece for those of us who are part of a church community. And so we're gonna do all of that, but we have this resource where you can put a lot of those things together for your loved ones. Another part of the conversation that this is on the resource list that I wanna share with you. Have any of you heard of this book, 4 Things That Matter Most by Ira Byock? This is a beautiful resource for you to incorporate into your life right now. And basically it is, he calls it a book about living. And he centers it, he tells you the whole thing at the very beginning. He centers it around 4 simple phrases. Please forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. And I love you. Which are often understood to be the things that a person nearing the end of their life needs to say and hear said to them. But the point of this book is we should be doing that throughout our lives. So going back to what we talked about at the beginning, eternity is a circle that we are in. And so we live every day with this intention, understanding that we are mortal. And so those 4, please forgive me, I forgive you, I'm sorry, and thank you. I really recommend this as a way to think about how we want to live our lives with an understanding of our human mortality. And then one last thing that I forgot to mention, that Karen was talking about the things we learned in school, and I took a course in seminary on the ethics of the end of life. And my professor in that was extraordinary. She had done a lot of work in end of life issues. And one thing she said that stuck with me that I tell people a lot, it is this: each of us only gets one death. Shouldn't it be a good one? And I want to leave you with that and have you think about that, because that's one of those statements that you have to noodle, let it noodle in your head a little bit, because we don't often put good with death, but each of us only gets one death. Shouldn't it be a good one? What would that look like for you? That's what this is about. What would it look like for you to have a good death? What does it look like for your loved ones to have a good death? And how can you move into that conversation with them and for them? Okay. What questions do you have? Ben?
I may be the only one that doesn't know what this box is.
The knock box?
Yeah, what is
Next
that?
of kin box, NOK.
Okay.
Alex, do you want to talk about it?
So if you Google it on your phone, you will get a Facebook ad within 30 minutes.
Actually, all of your friends are going to show it to you now. Now that we've mentioned it, it's going to go on.
The knock box.
Yeah,
That's true. It has a section first for like documents. So your car title, your house documents, and that things like that. it has contact information, it has what are your passwords and stuff like that, and these are all in one box that you can lock. And so that, you know, somebody could, if you should suddenly pass and nobody knows any of this stuff, they can go to that. He bought it for his parents and we actually never got around to using it for them, and we lost a lot of stuff with them, but we're using it for ourselves right now. It's pretty,
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard tell you could also make your own, if you didn't want to buy one, they sell online, you can make your own.
And by the way, a related story on that, we've been down the path with dementia, and it is what it is. Don't put all the original documents of somebody with the person if they have dementia, because things can happen to them. Make sure that between you and anybody else who's helping you, to make sure that you or somebody else has the original. That's how you avoid probate.
Yes.
Amongst other things.
Never gets to scan in everything.
Yeah.
Digital copies.
Katherine, I'm in the process of moving my mother into assisted living tomorrow. And one thing I've learned with my mother, she has some cognitive issues. My brother and I have been there packing stuff up, and we get back there like 3 days later, she has unpacked it. You've
forgotten to put it in the car, Tim.
Well, you know, it's a funny story for us to hear, but the frustration of that and the reality for all of us. When I'm living in that, my father has dementia, and caring for him, one of my mantras now is aging is not a problem to be solved. It's a process to be managed. And I think that has brought me a lot of peace, because I tend to be a problem solver and wanting to go in and fix all the things. And we go in and fix the things, and then the things get unfixed somehow. And that's just the nature of aging, I think. And so if we move into it with like, we're living in this, we're managing it the best we can, and sometimes we get a win and sometimes we get a big loss, and we just keep moving. Thank you for sharing that.
That reminds me of the story that the component that we have. You mentioned is like your house and like all the stuff in it. And, you know, you've been blessed to live in the same house with my parents for 40, whatever years. And, you know, I haven't had to deal with this yet, but I'm trying to get them to deal with it some. And because my brother, I didn't think about it, my little brother who's 6 years younger than me told me about when my grandmother passed away and I was living in New York City. I'd graduated college and he was still at home. And he told me recently that like it was traumatizing that he and my mom were the ones who did it. Her brother left town, you know, went back after, and that the first couple of days you're sort of looking at little things and crying, and then you start losing your mind and just throwing out the stuff that's just also traumatizing. You know, he said it was horrible, and he just really wants us to try to handle that for our parents whose house is twice or 3 times as big as, of course, my mother's whole house.
Yeah. And how many of you have seen the thing that says, hey, boomers and Gen X, the generations behind you don't want your stuff. They don't want your furniture. They don't go ahead and get rid of it because they don't want it.
So my dad has gotten into the planning mode, thankfully for all of us, and he's been organized. My mom passed, I guess, 4 years ago, but anyway, but it is not unheard of any day of a week that I will get a call from my dad that says, hey, are you interested in the grandfather clock? Oh, you're not? For some reason I thought you were. Okay, well, I won't put your name by it. I'll go call the rest. You know, there are 4 of us. And so he's like going through all the big items. Okay, all the Coast Guard memorabilia, I think that's on your list, right? And I'm like, yeah, so I'm gonna get a room full of stuff and I'll keep it for you. But, you know, so he is like getting organized, and it's been great. But it, you know, it's a little unnerving initially, but now it's like, okay, sure, it's gonna make our life easier.
Have you gone in yet? He's got place cards by everything.
Yeah, not there. But he's got a yellow notepad where it's all written down, so.
Post-it notes.
Yeah.
We're into a storage unit, a double storage unit. And we're doing that. Do you want this? Do you want that?
Yeah.
It's
a lot. Well, thank y'all for being part, yeah.
I'll wind us down. Katherine and Karen, I guess in the fabric or the tapestry of your conversation, thank you for weaving in not only the I, because some of us come from the I, the me, but we also come from mom and dad and grandparents too. So we're all here for a different reason. So thank you both for weaving into that the different conversations and allowing us to have consideration for those things that we've been thinking about for the future.
Thank you all for being here, for showing up courageously to talk about something